Today we talk about core pillars of game design.
So, Frank, I got some ideas for some pillars for our game.
Oh, like the core pillars of what we're going to build everything around? Okay,
Yeah.
A little late to be thinking about that, Charles, but go ahead and hit me.
All right. So first, investigative.
Makes sense. All right, keep going.
Combat.
All right, everything's making sense so far.
Salt.
Pillars of Salt.
For flavor.
Okay, next one.
Pillars of eternity.
That's just a video game.
And lastly, the band pillar.
Welcome to What is Tabletop, where Charles likes puns a little bit more than me. That's his core pillar of game design. I'm Frank Joseph Hall. I don't know why I said my middle name this time, but I used to say it all the time. That's my core pillar of being inconsistent.
His full government name.
Well, no, it wasn't the full government name. There's three letters after that.
there's a part after.
But what are we talking about today, Charles?
Well, so I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. Today we're talking about core pillars.
No, you did not. You introduced yourself pretty well by talking about puns, my guy. That's like half of your personality.
Fair. I'll allow it.
Before we talk about core pillars of game design and actually what we're talking about today, like, comment, and subscribe. Tell us how we're doing. Tell us we're dumb, or tell us that we can't finish a complete sentence.
I struggle with that.
He also struggles with talking about the Discord, where you can also talk about all the things we talked about, including game design. You can have people come in and analyze very nicely your game design and talk about some things that you can improve on, stuff like that. It's a really fun community. We recommend you join.
Yeah. And everything I'm doing today is going to be a bit. No.
Oh, goodness. This is the day I've been ruining.
So we were talking about your core pillar. Usually it's one thing, but core pillars of your D&D, or your core pillar of your TTRPG design.
I'm keeping that in.
That's fine. I have no control with
How
this.
are you designing your D&D?
We are really off the rails now.
So I would actually argue, before we even get into it, doesn't have to be one core pillar. Yeah. So there can be multiple core pillars. But let's talk about what core pillars are first. Do you have an idea, Charles, of what a core pillar is when we talk about game design?
So my idea of what a core pillar is for when it comes to game design is what is one or a few of the things that really set, like, without this, your game doesn't stand. It's just, it falls apart. It's like you need this one thing or these multiple things to make your game kind of like, oh, this is what this game is. It's like, it makes it identifiable, playable, and understandable, I guess. Like all those three things. Maybe.
Yeah, I would basically say that a core pillar of your game is like, if I had to sit down and be like, explain this game to me, it's like, it's an investigative horror game. Oh, okay. Or it's a combat-focused adventuring game. Oh, okay. Right. Like, it's the idea of what the main point of the game is going to be about. Those are like your core pillars. Right. From a gameplay perspective specifically. So all the gamers out there are going to really enjoy this video. Sorry, narrativists, but we'll kind of talk about you a little bit.
Just a little.
This is technically a sequel to our Dice Resolution video where we said, this is the first thing you need before... Listen, we need clickbaity titles. This one's going to have a clickbaity title too. That's the only way people can watch these things.
You know, guys, it works. So if you don't like them, I'm sorry.
But the idea is, this is another way you could theoretically start your game design. It doesn't have to just be the dice mechanical side. It could be like, what is the kind of game you want to make?
Yeah.
I want to make a really combat crunchy focused game. Cool. Knowing that, I can now branch off, right? If you want to make a superhero game, you have to know, well, what about the superhero genre do you enjoy? I want it to be about superheroes saving people. Okay, that is your core pillar of heroics. Right. It is a heroic game, and you can go from there. Is it a tactical game? Stuff like that. We're going to go over examples of what core pillars are, but that is kind of what we wanted to talk about.
A Batman game would differ from like a Spider-Man game because of like what you're trying to accomplish. Batman's more from the shadows type stuff, you know, so you stealth. It'd be more about those kind of mechanics, so you would know what mechanics to include. Whereas Spider-Man's a little more lighthearted, fun, and open, and you're not trying to hide necessarily. I mean, stealth could be a mechanic, but it wouldn't be your top mechanic necessarily.
Yeah, like if you look at Arkham Asylum versus Insomniac Spider-Man, they're very similar gameplay styles, but like the core pillars in Batman specifically, you are investigating a lot more.
Yes.
Like they're both super smart characters, but in Batman, there are specific scenes that are about investigating and looking for clues and what to do next, like analyzing crime scenes and stuff like that. In Spider-Man, there's a lot of like, let me, instead of analyzing a crime scene, it's taking like a piece of sampling and then using a puzzle to like break it out. So like that's the more scientific focused things.
Yeah. I love that comparing those two video games actually makes a lot of sense for what we're discussing today too, because it takes that one genre and like divides it into like, hey, you could have different parts of this genre. So yeah, you want to make a superhero game. It doesn't have to be like every other superhero game. It could be different.
Right. And that's kind of why you'll have some games that'll find a core system, and then once they've solidified that, they'll start doing different kinds of games based off of that core system that'll have different pillars in each game, and therefore will have slightly different mechanics from game to game, because ideally, not always, ideally if your core pillar should influence your game design. If you're wanting to have combat and you're like, cool, combat is a one die roll mechanic, well, that doesn't feel like a combat focused game because there's a lot less choices made in that regard. And usually when people are wanting to focus on combat, they want more choices when it comes to that. But if you're doing a narrative focused game, a one die roll to determine combat isn't as bad because you're focusing on the narrative. And so being like, well, every roll is determined by one dice roll is much better in certain games than they are in other games. Are you enjoying the video so far? Then you should check out our Patreon, where we have a bunch of additional stuff that you can enjoy.
We have a series called We're Promised We're Friends because apparently people think we're not because Frank is mean to me.
I am not mean to you, but we do talk about all various things, not just tabletop RPGs, a bunch of different stuff. We talk about, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? It's not.
I still concede that it is.
We also have the live streams from all of our design live streams. So if you want to watch them in full, not just the edited clip versions that we put out for free on YouTube, Patreon is also where you want to go.
And of course, there's higher tiers where you can help us design things like one-shots and maybe even play games with us.
And of course, if you're only wanting to watch the videos, you can become a YouTube member and you'll get all the videos that are available on the Patreon as well. We got session zeros, we got upcoming one-shots, all the fun stuff, and you get to be a part of it. Join us on Patreon. Now back to the actual video.
So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about D&D. What are some the core pillars of D&D?
Yeah, so here is a very interesting thing. The core pillars of D&D, what they say the core pillars of D&D are, is not necessarily what the actual core pillars of D&D are. So let's think. What is one core pillar? Combat.
Yeah, combat. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What are the other two that they claim are core pillars? This is what Wizards of the Coast say are the core pillars of D&D.
Is it social? Mm-hmm. Investigative?
Not investigative. It's exploring.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, now that I've said it out loud, I'm like, kind of. I feel like combat's definitely the big one in it. I feel.
Yes, and that is the kind of the big criticism a lot of people have towards Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is this idea that you say you have 3 core pillars, but in actuality you have 1.
Yeah, because they've given more attention to the combat than there could be so many interesting things you do with especially explorative, because there's only a handful of games that I'm aware of that do that.
Right, and a big example of this is that people are like, no, but it has rules for like encumbrance and like how often you can rest and things like that. The problem is when I am making a character and I decide I'm going to choose the Wanderer background, and in the Wanderer background it gives me the ability you never have to worry about food. That's kind of a huge thing.
Yeah. So I guess it'd be kind of cool to play a campaign, like a real D&D campaign where you'd have to worry about more survival rules.
And there are some books and campaign settings and stuff like that do that. The problem is the core game says that is a core part of what it is, but it's not.
Not because they allow you to mitigate it, or ignore it, flat out ignore it sometimes.
Right, and so I would argue it's not. Social is something I think we all agreed. Peter and I actually did a video on social mechanics, and we talked about how one of the thumbnails was literally that being the pillar that doesn't work. It's supposed to be like, oh, the social interactions you have, but there are no mechanics really outside of skill checks that talk about social mechanics, right? There's no like, okay, you have to do a back and forth where it's like, if you're talking to a noble, you have to roll a specific skill and then they roll a counter skill and then you roll a counter skill and stuff like that. There's no mechanics like that. There's no mechanics that state, when you do this kind of a thing, you can't use the same skill again unless this person has an affinity for X, Y, and Z. Stuff like that is all additional to the game, but the core game does not have that.
Now, I guess the next question is, do they do that one pillar well? Is that something they do?
I mean,
well?
It's the most popular RPG out there, and it's probably going to be the most popular for a long time.
It's got brand recognition. It's got so much going for it, Yeah. I think it took a lot of the brain work out of things too, so it made it more accessible to people, because I know, looking back at some of the older rules, like with THAC0 and things like that, it made it crunchy and it made it interesting. So like if you were into mechanics, that's amazing. But for people who are like, I just want to play a game and pretend I'm somebody else for a couple hours, they're not going to care about that as much.
I think most people will not care about the core pillar design. They're just wanting to play a game.
Right.
Other editions of D&D even do combat systems better. I think 4th edition probably has the best combat system.
Right.
But the problem with 4th edition was a lot of people didn't like that it was too focused on combat. And,
Yes.
And so 5th edition kind of does, push it back a little bit to allow for more freedom from players and stuff like that, and allowing to more improvisation and changing the rules in that regard. So in that way, 5th edition is good. And I'm not going to say it's a problem. I'm just saying when you're making your own design and you're saying, I want investigation to be a core pillar, and then you don't have any mechanics, people are going to play your game expecting it to be investigative, and then nothing supports that outside of
role play
or what the GM does. Because I can add in mechanics to 5th edition to make it more social.
Yeah, so this is all about built-in pillars, not like, things you could homebrew. Because again, you can homebrew anything.
We're going to go into a bunch of examples of kinds of pillars you could have. We're not limited to these, but these are ones that come to my mind. So combat's a big one. And I think there are many different ways. You can have rules-light games that are still focused on combat, and you can have rules-heavy games that are still focused on combat. Yeah. Usually when it comes to combat, there's the idea of like, well, what is it? Because is it a cinematic combat?
Okay.
Where it's like, I just want to describe myself kicking butt, right? Daggerheart does that. Where,
yes.
Like, it is a much more, it's surprisingly crunchy, where like the way you customize your character can influence combat, but like it's also one roll. Right. So I remember a game where you were playing your rogue, your assassin actually now, and you're like, oh, I want to take out these guys. And like the mechanics said they were a horde. So every certain amount of damage knocks out a guy. So you had to get like 56 damage, and you got like more than 56 damage, but it allowed for like cinematic where it was like, okay, you took out 6 guys. Well, let's think about it. Well, you grab one dagger, throw it, grab the other guy's dagger, break his arm, stab him, throw it at another guy. Like this guy throws the dagger, but you catch it and throw it back, right? That works in a more lax
in a more
game.
narrative environment. Yeah, it was really fun because I enjoyed that a lot too. Because again, I love rolling dice, but I love being able to explain like, oh, how do you do this? I love that moment when a GM tells me that. I'm like, oh, this is my moment.
So more rules-light games tend to be more cinematic versus crunchier games tend to be more tactical. Right. So Indominate is trying to be a more tactical game. Draw Steel wants to be more tactical. And that means that there's a lot more intent behind your choices. But at the same time, there's information that's always relatively available, so you can be a little bit wiser of like, okay, I have this many resources that allow me to do these things. So now let me plan my turn ahead, right? Basically, the idea is how much planning do you need? That if you need more planning, you're to be on the tactical side of combat. If you want it to just be more like a movie where it's like, I want to do this really cool thing and don't want the mechanics to get in the way, you're going to be more on the rules light side.
Tactical versus narrative doesn't necessarily imply complexity either, because narrative can be very complex too if you want to. It really just depends on how good you are describing things. But in the tactical could just be like very, very simple as well.
And here's an additional core pillar: customization.
Yes.
I would argue a lot of tactical focused games have customization in there, but it's not a requirement for that. Suede, right? Savage Worlds is a great example of a game that its core pillar is customization, but it's not like super crunchy.
Yeah.
It's very it's not, I wouldn't even say it's tactical per se, but it's more about like creating the kind of narrative character you want to make that you can then go on to play with. Versus Pathfinder, especially Pathfinder 2e, where it's like the customization is there to the point where it's like, okay, you are determining your feats like at level 1. You're going to start thinking like, I want to get this feat at level 10. So how do I get there?
Yeah.
That is a much more like customizable game in that regard too, but it's more on the tactical side than it is on the narrative side.
Yeah. Like with our game that we're developing, I think that's one of the things you asked me is like, what is one of the big things and one of the major things outside of it being, outside the themes was I want customization to be a big part of it, because I like having player agency and letting them do like, this is what I want to do. I want to make it super. I want them to make their character and their world kind of like, I want it to feel like they were a part of the creation of it.
Yeah, and so if one of your core pillars is narrative design and you still want the customization, something you might want to include that a lot of more tactically focused games aren't going to have is flaws, right?
Yes.
So it might be like, in order to take this feat that gives you this really cool thing, you get a flaw with it. Or maybe while you're making the character, you have to take a flaw feat. Like you have to take this negative feat in order for something to happen. These are things that are going to be more in narrative focused games usually.
Right.
Like you're not going to see in Pathfinder where it's like, in order to take the feat that allows you to, shoot 10 arrows at once, which was an actual feat in Pathfinder First Edition, by the way. You have to then take the feat that actually gives you a -1 penalty every time you shoot 3 arrows. Like you don't see that in You don't see that in Pathfinder, right?
Actually, it was funny because I was playing something the other day. I can't remember what it was, but it basically did that. Like it might have been Baldur's Gate. I can't remember what I was playing. I was playing something where it's like, in order for you to do this, because I think D&D has like something similar. It's like you have to it gives you a negative, but your attack modifier goes down, but like your damage goes up or something like that if you're able to get past it.
So that's Great Weapon Master and stuff like that.
Yes.
Where it's like sharpshooter, where it's like I'm taking a penalty to my hit, but in possibility of more damage.
Yes.
Kind of like that, yeah.
Right.
But like again, that's more of a risk reward versus a permanent flaw. I am getting a permanent negative thing to me. Those are going to be usually more on the narrative side.
Yeah. Like in Peter's game, like in Tales from Elsewhere.
Peter wanted it, one of his core pillars to clearly be about like player autonomy and stuff like that. That's why you have the luck mechanic where you as a player determine I'm having a bad luck from my past happen so I can gain a luck to use later. You are choosing like, oh, I had a run-in with this outlaw group and they are in town and they're looking for me. How much autonomy do you want your players to have in controlling the game is another core pillar. And that's I think that's also one of ours as well, is like player choice. We don't want the players to have to constantly ask the GM, can I do this, or this? They know what their options are and they just choose them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you look at a lot of indie developers, I think you see a lot more of that, more and more of that, because I think with in the TTRPG space, we have a lot of players who just want, and GMs even, who are like, I don't want to make every decision for my players. I want them to be able to, we want the games to feel like we want to be immersed.
Yes.
And when you take away player autonomy, it's less immersive. It is more work on the GM side too. So it actually works. It coincides and works well with player and GMs by having that in there, by having that customizability and the ability to have more narrative focus and put more stuff on the player.
Well, and that's why you'll see games that are like, we really want a focus on narrative. So the GM's going to have less mechanics to worry about, like not even rolling dice, so that they can just focus on the narrative of the game. You'll see it. That's like, again, this is how your core pillars influence the kind of games you're making.
Absolutely.
Right? Let's talk about another core pillar really quick. We have social, we have we have like explorative, investigative, which is kind of like explorative in the same way. It's just much more confined. But investigative is usually more puzzly. And we have 2 games up here that I kind of wanted to talk about because both of them are investigative games, but they also take vastly different routes.
Different approaches, 100%.
Right. And so this is kind of examples of how you can have a core pillar, but then additional pillars might change what the game looks like. So we have Call of Cthulhu and we have City of Mist. Both of these games are about investigating, right? In Call of Cthulhu, you are literally investigators figuring out what's going on with this cult and you're trying to stop it. In City of Mist, you are investigators trying to stop whatever supernatural thing is happening, right? The difference is combat in City of Mist is expected. And they even tell you like, hey, when you're making your character and their powers, have one that's combat focused. And Call of Cthulhu is not that.
Call of Cthulhu is like, you're probably going to die. Figure out how to avoid it.
Right. Call of Cthulhu is don't get yourself into the situations. And if you do, you better hope you don't die. And so like the mechanics around that is vastly different, right? So like I remember playing Call of Cthulhu, standing next to my friend who had a shotgun, taking some of the damage because I was standing next to him and being so mad about it. They wanted that more realism of like, no, you fire a gun, someone's getting hurt.
Especially like someone with buckshot. I was like, I buy every moment of this game right now. I'm like, that 100% could happen in real life. So.
Right. And so like that's the idea is it's more on the realism side, which makes combat harder versus City of Mist is like, no. You definitely want it. You're superheroes to some extent. You have superpowers and you're going to use them to do super cool things. So the investigative side is more getting you from action point to action point. Call of Cthulhu, it's like, no, you're investigating and trying to unfold the mystery with the hope that you survive. That's more of a horror setting. Versus City of Mist is like, we want to get to the crime boss. How do we find the crime boss? Oh, now that we found the crime boss, we have to fight the crime boss.
It's more like a procedural type stuff where this is more like,
horror
mystery,
Right. And this brings up a good point too. Is theme a part of the core pillars?
I think it can be separated. I don't think it has to be a part of it. So because your game can be themed around anything. It can be we're going to do superhero, we're going to do action movie, we're going to do fantasy, sci-fi, whatever. Your pillar is going to be how that game feels. That's what separates City of Mist from Call of Cthulhu. That's what separates like dominant from the Marvel games and things like
Yeah.
that. It's going to be your pillars is what's going to separate you from everyone else potentially.
Right. And you can have an investigative pillar and then put a different theme on top of it.
Correct.
That's how you get City of Mists. What happens if superheroes have to investigate? Call of Cthulhu is what does investigative horror look like? And that's the different routes you take, right? If it's superheroes, you're going to have more combat. If it's horror, you're going to want to avoid it. And so, yeah, I agree that theme isn't necessarily a core pillar. Being thematic could be, where it's like, oh, yeah, because it's a horror game, there are these mechanics that feed into it. So, like, 10 Candles is horror to almost to the point where, like, it is a core pillar, but I would say that's because the core pillar is theme and thematics and, like, getting you involved in that.
So, and that's the thing too, and that's more of a, and that's just a narrative, really. One, there's, did we roll dice in that at all?
Yes, you did roll dice.
I'm trying to remember. It was like, it's been a while. It'd be like, yeah, it's
you had like 10 dice.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. And you lose dice as you lose candles and stuff. That's correct. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. But yeah, horror was definitely, like, the theme was definitely a pillar in that one. I didn't think about that. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, like, Dread's the same thing, where, like, the only mechanic is pulling a Jenga tower, but because there is tension there, the core pillar is literally tension building. 100%. Because every time you do something that is a little risky, you're pulling from the tower, hoping that this isn't the time it falls, because if it does, my character's dead. Yeah, and, like, that is so thematic. Again, thematics is the core pillar there. And so they just happen to choose the theme of horror.
So, and I would imagine that if the more narrative based your game is where that's when the theme becomes more of a pillar. Right. Because you don't need your theme to be a pillar. But if your game is less on the crunchy side and more on the narrative side, you will probably find that your theme becomes much more of a pillar, because then it has to stand on that idea alone.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Like Fiasco, which
I love Fiasco so much, guys.
Which it may or may not be an RPG, but, like, its core pillar is thematics, and the thematics is everything's gonna happen. Like, it's gonna be a fiasco. Yes. Nothing's gonna go well for anybody, and that is by the fact that you roll dice randomly to determine your bonds and stuff like that, and then halfway through you roll the remaining dice to determine what's gonna go wrong. You know what? Now I feel like I want to make another game based on Fiasco, but not so much. It could, like, it's more like it could go wrong, but, like, maybe something weird happens and something goes right. Charles, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the pitfall every game designer has, is they start making something and then they come up with another cool design and then start focusing on that. No, it's on the back burner. It's just, no, I'm going to fit it. Screenpunk is the main focus, but, like, just, I think it'd be funny. So let's bring it in. Yeah. Let's say we have a max of 3 pillars we want in Screenpunk. If you had to choose, what would you say are those core pillars of Screenpunk? First and foremost, customizability, I think, is one of the big ones, because we talked about that. And that's not just, that's mostly with, like, your character. Like, I guess there's everything. Customizability is important. Player autonomy, I think, was another one. And I think combat would be... I would argue, granted, we are still making the game. Yeah, so... I don't know how much combat is going to factor into it. Yeah. Because we've already talked about, too, how we're going to have certain settings where it's like, this is the more, like, goofy 50s Who's Next Door setting. I would argue it's going to be narrative. Because you can have narrative combat like Daggerheart has. Yeah. But, like, that's more like one roll determines it. Okay, you got an extraordinary success. So what does that look like? Well, I grab the monster, swing onto his back, punch him in the back of the head. As I fall, I shoot him in the face, dealing the damage, and that causes him to lose, right? You know what? I'm going to go back on that. Yeah, 100%. You're right. Narrative, because, again, it was narrative initially, and it still is. So yeah, so that's our core pillars. And so a lot of our game design is based off of that. I know for a fact it is, because we are literally choosing things that are based around player choice. Like, literally, I'd be like, this is a cool idea. How do we make it more focused towards player choice? Right. This is a cool idea. How do we make it more focused towards player choice? And so a lot of that is baked into the decisions we make, right? I even came up to Charles in a previous video and talked about, like, I have a new idea for the target number because it gives more player choice. And so that's something we want to think about and discuss. Like, are we willing to change a little bit of our core design because it gives more player autonomy? And then the customization part we are getting into. It's been a long month. And it's only been 2 weeks. Legitimately, this has been our busiest month. Just even in personal, it's been crazy. So but it will be even busier at the end of the month because we're going to be at Gen Con. Yes, if you're there, will this video be out before then? The week before. So yes. The week before. So yeah, if you're out there at Gen Con, come check us out. We'd love to say hi and take a picture or whatever. Yeah. Be in the Discord and you can tell us where to go. Absolutely. We will not have anything about Screenpunk at Gen Con. Right now, we're just going to kind of meet people and be there and network. play Peter's game. It's gonna be really
Yeah,
fun.
I'm looking forward to. I'm getting more and more pumped as we get closer to the
Yeah,
date.
we're definitely stealing things from Peter. I told him that already.
Oh, like literally stealing stuff.
He had a really cool video that I'll show you later. That I was like, yeah, that's actually. Yep, we might have to steal that. That's a cool idea.
Oh, so I thought you meant like we're gonna be stealing stuff from him at Gen Con.
No, that's illegal.
Peter, I got your wallet. What are you gonna do, buddy?
For legal reasons, this is a joke.
100% a joke.
For legal reasons, this is all sarcasm. Stay witty, because Charles is not.
I got a Twitch.
For legal reasons, I do not know this man.
I'm your co-host.